Hi everyone, my name is Charlie Saginaw, and I'm a brand planning intern with Christopher Owens Group. I'm really happy that you guys are here because I'm excited for what I have to share with you guys. So, by show of hands, who watched the YouTube video invitation here? Okay, cool. So some homespun YouTube analytics. So that's about like 75%. So you guys know that I take pictures of people in front of doors. And I want to talk to you about identity, who people are and their convictions, and why they do what they do, as a reflection of this ongoing for 6-year project that I've been doing, taking pictures of doors, and how it's evolved and what I've discovered in the process. So I also want to show you how this door thing doesn't just apply to my life, but I think it also speaks to what we try to do here at the Richards Group. And so let's start with an exercise. Now I want you guys to imagine that you're in Central Europe, in Hungary, and you're in what's called a Gypsy Roma neighborhood. And you see this man, and you see this door, and this is a Mongolian yurt. And looking at this, the blue, and this small door, and this man, I want you to just kind of paint the scene in your head of what kind of things you'd see behind this yurt door. Now, if anybody wants to share what they see, just raise your hand. Okay, what kind of things do you imagine seeing behind this door? Back? Yeah. Okay, cool. What do you see?
Lots of rugs laid out on the floor.
Okay, cool.
It's definitely a pot of tea.
A pot of tea. Interesting. Cool. And then, taking all the things that we see behind the door, who do you think this guy is? What do you think his vibe is, his personality?
It's probably like a hippie.
What tells you about him? What informs that?
His long hair. He looks relaxed, laid back.
But what do you think? This sounds kind of silly, but what do you think his door says about him?
I think it gives like a very rustic, naturalistic vibe.
Okay, rustic, naturalistic. Okay, cool. So let's see who this guy really is. This guy's name is David Klein, and he is a professional mountain climber. His claim to fame is trying to summit Mount Everest without assistance of oxygen. And he's the first one person in Hungary to try to ever do so. And he's also one of the most prolific couch surfing hosts in central Hungary. And so that means that I actually stayed in his house, or his yurt, as you can see me right here. And I stayed there for a week and got to see how he lived. And so looking back about what I know about doors and identity now, I realized that everything that I figured out about David was reflected in that small yurt door. Because his life was austere. After graduating from university with a degree in philosophy and parents who were professors, he decided to reject that lifestyle. And he just went to Mongolia to go climb mountains. And then he went to Pakistan. And then he went to Nepal. And he decided to not live in the city where his parents lived, but he'd rather out in the country. And so much of what David was as a person and who he is now was reflected to me in this door. And the point is that doors by themselves are impressions. They tell you how to feel, maybe just implicitly. But what I find fascinating is that people's connections to the doors that they pick, that they find some special meaning in, whether they live behind them or if they find it through some other means. And I believe that tells a story. And so my story kind of kicks off right after I was done couch surfing in Hungary with David Klein. And I went back to Austin, where I was in school studying history, and I saw the world with new eyes. Every time I looked at a door, I imagined the world behind it. I imagined the people who were living and working behind it, and what the details of that door, what the doorknob or how worn it was, said about what they were doing. And from a cultural perspective, I thought it was really interesting that doors had rich metaphors. So on one hand, when we talk about an open door, we talk about an opportunity. And when we talk about a closed door, we talk about the lack of opportunity. And if you read the news about anything that goes on behind closed doors, it's no secret it's bad news bears. And so for that very reason, this wonderful building doesn't have a lot of doors between people. And that's because Stan understood the paranoia that it caused. even like these doors are clear. And so there's so much wrapped up in them. And I really, really thought it was such a fun and interesting kind of project. And so with not a lot of direction, I did what most young people do when they like something and they don't know what to do. I pulled out my smartphone and I walked around and I took pictures of every door I thought was interesting. I went to Papa John's, I went to the Capitol in Austin, and I took pictures of doors there. I took pictures of doors at my co-op. And something weird happened. A week went by, a month went by, and I had no recollection of why I took pictures of those doors. There was no context. And I would flip through them, and I just really didn't know. And I remembered something that my mom, Roseanne, said. And she said something really interesting, that if you want to remember a picture, you have to humanize it. You have to put a person in that picture. And so when I looked through her photos from her travels in South America with my dad in the 70s, there was never an inanimate object without a person, a travel buddy, my dad in it. And she can still to this day recall all of the stories, how she was feeling at that very moment, when she was in Bolivia or when she was in Chile. And I wanted that. So in 2012, I had my first opportunity. I had the opportunity to go to Guatemala. And I went there with my girlfriend, Rachel. And I found this really cool door, and I was ready to strike. I was going to humanize this door. And so I asked Rachel to stand in front of this door, and she had an interesting response. She said, "That one?" Ooh." And then the next thing she said was, "Just don't put it on Facebook." So realizing that there was this incongruity, it just didn't speak to her, and she's also my girlfriend, I want to keep her happy. I realized that she needed to pick one for herself. And so a day later, she said, "I want this one." And I think this speaks so much to who Rachel is. She's the kind of person that thrives under pressure and starts to laugh a little bit to break the tension. And that's just such a part of who she is that I really started to believe that in the choices that people made in their doors, it reflected something about their identity. And so since then, I've taken about 200 photos of people in front of doors that they choose. I even picked doors for myself. And it's really exciting for me because I don't only get to see doors and travel, but I also get to learn more about my friends, my family members, some of my coworkers, and learn about the choices that they make, get a little bit further into who they are as people. And that's been really exciting. So I've done this so far in Dallas, and I even feel like I'm traveling in my own city when I get on the hunt for a door and finding my friend's door. And so that's really neat. But then also I've done this in Nicaragua and Guatemala, and most recently, before I took this internship on January 5th, and ended my job doing sales to department stores, I took a job doing one of my favorite things, and that was riding bicycles. And I was leading a group called Birthright International, and there was 42 people who were going to meet on December 15th in JFK, who all had this only connection that was that they were Jewish and that they had a free trip to Israel. Besides that, we were total acquaintances, strangers. And so after checking them in with my co-leader, Callie, I told them that there's going to be interesting doors. And if you find one that speaks to you, let me take your picture in front of it. And so they found their doors. All 41 of them found doors that they found super interesting and spoke to who they were. And I have a few examples. So this is Carly. And Carly is a fourth-year student in the University of Georgia. And she's an architecture student. And she is at a crossroads in her life. She's about to graduate, and she's just discovering one of her true callings, and that is making jewelry. And she's starting to make a go of it on Etsy and getting a following on Pinterest. And she's feeling this pull between what she's been trained to do and what she's just discovering about herself. And when I asked her why she picked this white door, she told me that she wanted a blank slate, a clean, blank canvas. And that's the identity she wanted for herself now. And then there's Rachel Grossman. Boy, she's a character. She's from Portland, Oregon, and her favorite color is red, as evidenced by her jacket. But also, she owns a food cart where she makes handcrafted pasta and shares it with the people who work with. And she decided that especially she wanted her business to be red. And so when she found this door, she's like, oh, that's like my food truck. And also, she loves to dance. She danced at every opportunity. It was kind of socially weird at some points, but she found both her love of food and a vocation and one of her hobbies in dance, and it reflected who she was as a person. And so, by the end of the trip, I had 41 out of 42 photos. There was only one door photo that was missing, and that was with my co-leader, Callie. We had leadership differences. Callie was really good at making lists, and she was really good at getting from everyone from point A to point B. And I thought that was half of our job. I thought the other half was doing fun stuff like door photos, as weird as it was. And on the last day, I approached Callie. We were in Tel Aviv, and I said, hey, it's the last day. Everyone's got their photos. Can I take yours? And she looked around, and she politely declined. And I thought maybe she thought my idea was stupid, that this was just a waste of time, that we were supposed to make sure that everyone just got back on the plane and made it back to North America safe. And about 2 weeks later, when I took the group back to Ben Gurion and then back to JFK and settled back into Dallas, and she was still there, she posted this. She said, Charlie Saginaw, I found my door in Tel Aviv, finally. It wasn't the fact that she was so choosy about the door she wanted. It wasn't because she thought it was stupid, because she wanted to find one that reflected her as a person. And having seen this, I think I know a little bit more about Callie, even though we spent 10 days together counting people to 41 and making sure they got on the bus and got off the bus and everyone had extra tire tubes for their bike ride. And it really taught me a lot about who she was, and it makes me really happy that she found her door. And so, what I learned is that doors by themselves, inanimate objects, they make an impression on us all. But ultimately, we have so many impressions in our lives. And they're ultimately fleeting. We forget about them. Just like the doors I couldn't remember on my phone. And then, putting a person in front of a door that they didn't choose, that they have no connection to, well, that's inauthentic. It's memorable for me, but it's forced, and it's not shareable. Because Rachel said, don't put this on Facebook. And when someone gets to choose their door, and they have a choice and a voice, and they get to share it through the medium of either photos or through Facebook or Instagram, then I believe I'm helping people tell their own story of their identity. And so when I noticed that there was this theme of identity throughout all the doors that I picked, I noticed this pervasive theme in the doors that I have. And it's a Japanese term that my dad taught me. It's called wabi-sabi. Now, wabi-sabi means beauty through use, or perfect imperfection. And why would I ever describe myself as that? What about that? It seems a little odd, I'm sure. Well, the way my dad described it was that there are doors in Kyoto, Japan, that the entrance to a Shinto shrine, where hundreds of thousands of worshipers walk through those doors. And when they push on the door, after the collective hand oil, after years and years of use, it started to fade away the paint. And that didn't make it bad, it actually made it more beautiful. Its utility made it better. And the threshold of the door, of people shuffling their feet, it had made it more beautiful. And so, if the story of my life can be compared to a door, I want it to be a wabi-sabi door. One that is shaped by hundreds of thousands of experiences and relationships and stories and challenges and peers like you all. A door that is not just shaped in the high ground or in the low ground of life, but in the sanctity of small moments, those moments in the middle. A door that is quick to open and slow to shut and lock, and that's my door. And so I realized that a lot of what we do here at the Richards Group is helping brands find their door. And by their door, I don't mean just a physical door, but helping find their identity, who they are, what their convictions are, what they stand for. And if they really hone it in and they really know who they are, then they create an expectation amongst their fans that they'll even know what to expect before they even walk in through an entryway. So I have two examples that are really, really different of brands that know who they are, and that is reflected in their door, but it's really just a reflection of their strong personality and identity. So by a show of hands, who here has been in an Anthropologie store? And you may have been on the couch just checking Facebook board. So what are some words you use to describe Anthropologie?
Dynamic.
Dynamic? Cool. And how would you describe the things that you find inside, like the experience?
Unique.
Unique?
Organic.
So I hear dynamic, organic, unique. Great. And so I went to North Park and I started snapping pictures of doors, as I'm known to do. But this time, this door wasn't just an inanimate object. I was aware of the personality of Anthropologie. And they know who they are. They're organic, they're unique, and even when you grasp that door handle, it's hand worked. It's not like any of the other doors at North Park Mall. It's just confirming what you already told me about that store and what experience you're going to have before you walk through that threshold and join that Anthropologie story. And the next example is my favorite bike shop. It's called Bikes Plus, and they only have 4 locations, not 189 like Anthropologie. And they're a community center. They love to ride bicycles. And they know everything about road bikes, the newest components that are coming out, the new trails that are opening, and what the best routes around White Rock Lake are. And even, I know this before I walk through the door, but when I grasp that handle to walk in, again, it's confirmed through their identity that I'm holding on to handlebar tape. It's just like riding in the Texas Hill Country or going around White Rock Lake for a 30-mile ride. I feel that tactilely, and I'm already excited to go in and go chat up the guys at the cranky mechanics back there and buy some new tire tubes. And I could buy it on Amazon, but for me it's really special and I love that. And so the point of this whole presentation, this whole point of bringing up my weird door thing is that if you don't know what your brand stands for, or for that matter what you stand for, or who your identity is, or what your convictions are, then how will anyone else know? But if you're like David Klein, or you're like Rachel, or you're like Carly, or you're like Rachel Grossman, or any of the other people who picked something about their door, you know something about yourself. And when you know what your currency is personally, or as a brand in the marketplace, and you own that, then I think you open the door to a world of possibilities. Thank you. Shameless plug, if you guys ever walk by and be like, hey, that's a door, that's my door, just like take a picture of you in front of it and you can email it to me. I'd really love to have it. That would be really special. So comments, questions, concerns?
Can you go back to the slide that has you in front of all the different doors and talk about that?
Sure.
What does all that say?
So what I see in these doors is that what I enjoy about them and what made me feel compelled to pick them is that their use, that wabi-sabi, that beauty through use, that this door here, this is actually in Nicaragua, that door has been used as part of a church for about 200 years. And I just thought that history was so amazing, and how many people had walked through there with something, with a heavy heart, grieving over a lost parent, or excited because they were going there for their wedding. And I just thought that I could almost see, like, I tend to imagine things, but I'd see like that fingerprint of those people, and I could kind of just imagine their stories, and that really excited me. And then let's see, so this door is in Guatemala, and I think what's really cool about the doors in Guatemala are that they're really brightly colored. They have, it's okay for a door to be bright pink next to a bright turquoise door. And I just love that kind of zest for life. And that's not something you see in America. That's a bold choice. And that's a lot of fun.
Is that a half-eaten ice cream cone?
That is a half-eaten. I was actually walking around in New York, and I asked a stranger, and And I, at the risk of maybe losing my phone, I was like, just don't run. Because I thought that just like all the graffiti, like that was definitely a residential court. And I was like, well, that person was still punk rock. And so I wanted to, you know, kind of get that, you know, capture that moment as well.
So you're ready to drop that kind of
Yeah, just got to pack the guy. Luckily, I got to keep my phone. Little baby.
Charlie, with cool insights and everything with the storyline, is there an end goal with the project, or is this something that's just ongoing that you hope to just sort of evolve as time passes?
So I think yes, yes to both. I'm not going to stop taking pictures and photos because I'm going to always meet new people, but I think it's also a way for me to get to know the people that I work with or, you know, share a room with and get to know my community a little better. And so I think that the point for me is finding out about people's identities. And so I'm going to continue, as long as I'm alive and meeting new people, then I'm going to continue this kind of unorthodox request asking thing. But I think that really it's just about finding out who people are through those kind of unusual choices. Yeah.
The man in the yurt, what was his name again?
David Klein.
What was his personality like? How was it like staying with him? I don't know how long you stayed with him, but.
So I stayed with a week. I stayed with him for a week in 2009 in June, and with my friend Lauren. And he was a real character. So he was this kind of guy. I didn't want to get like lost in because you could just kind of go on forever with him. But he was the kind of guy who challenged your Western, assumptions about acquiring things and how it really steals away from the quality of your life. And trying to kind of sort of convert you to David Kleinism, which is like living in a yurt, having a bunch of couch surfers stay on your floor, and having fires and drinking white wine that is like the lady down the street made. And so that was him, and he was a lot of fun. And what was really cool about couch surfing and why I love it so much is that like when you walk through their door, like you join their story. And I got to learn about how his dad was like the foremost psychology professor at the university, and how he studied philosophy, and he could have kind of followed in his footsteps, but really he knew that he had a different calling and a different direction for him. So it was a lot of fun. He was definitely someone who always tried to challenge your assumptions. So that's what you want when you're traveling when you're 19.
Have you had many situations where you just were completely surprised by the door somebody chose, like you completely misread their personality?
Let's see here. I want to look. So I think sometimes it's like the reaction people have. I don't know if you can see this, but Rebecca here, she was someone I call the shooting star, like someone you travel with for a little bit, and your time together is like brief and bright, and then you kind of go on your own intergalactic path. And so I thought, I really didn't know her that well, and when I just gave her this unorthodox request, I'm used to people just being like, all right, weirdo, whatever. But she was so excited when she found this shade of blue, and that really surprised me how exciting it was to her. I didn't really exactly catch why, but I really wish I would have known. But we're Facebook friends, so I can maybe ask her.
Do you remember everyone's name there? I mean, are you naturally good at remembering names? Does the door association make it stronger for you, or do you not necessarily remember everyone's?
Yes, that's my cousin Joe. That's Rebecca. That's me. That's my roommate Stephanie. Sterling is my cousin. I don't remember her name. That's Jeffrey, and that is Callie, and there's Carly, who we talked about, the white door, and that is his name was. Ooh, okay, so not everyone.
Still amazing.
Where do you house all these photos? Are they online, or do you have a backup hard
Yeah,
drive in case
so
something
Flickr is
happens?
really cool
Yeah.
because you have a terabyte, so that's a lot of door for it is. And so I keep it there, and then I also just put them on Facebook if people want me to share them, and it's that kind of way of just keeping in touch with those people you meet just like in passing.
Very cool.
Did you go behind any of the doors, and if so, did what was behind the door kind of match what was facing outwards?
So more often than not, no. It's usually just kind of I like to walk a lot, and I'm usually walking with people. I'm like, hey, if you see a door, let me know. So I don't usually get the chance, and that would be a really cool expansion or evolution of the project, to see the light behind the door, as sort of the book and then the cover of the book, and that would be really interesting. And I'd like to expand on that, but so far it's my David Klein experience has probably been one of the more in-depth inside the door photos.
So have you met anyone saying that like I cannot find a door that I want to take a picture with, and why do you think the reason is?
So the question is, have you met someone who did not want to take a door photo?
Yeah, or like tell you that I cannot find one.
I think it's generally when people are just weirded out by the question. It's just outside of their comfort zone. And so I've met a few people, but generally speaking, they're way in the minority. I would say 9 out of 10 people will eventually, at some point, if we have continuous contact with each other, realize I'm not going to harvest their organs. I'm not a crazy guy. I just want their picture in front of the door.
What's the most obscure response you've had?
Obscure response.
Like someone flipped out, or like was just having a bad day. You didn't expect that from them.
Oh, okay. So this is a really, really interesting one. You can see this guy is in yoga happy baby pose. And so that's kind of like, this guy's name is Alec, and he's again from Portland. And his signature thing is to do happy baby in all of these iconic places. So like he would climb to the mountaintop of Masada and do happy baby. And then he would, like go to a Portland Trail Blazers game. He showed me this picture on his phone. And he would do happy baby like near the court. And so that was probably one of the stranger reactions I've ever had.
Charlie, you talked about like going from just the door to people in front of it to like an expression, or not an expression, but a choice. But then you sort of moved from this place of where you were present for the photo versus now you're like letting people just send them to you. How important is like the presence, like the experience versus just the self-expression?
So I think that's a really, really good question, because the answer is the reaction. Because when someone doesn't have too much information about this project, there's just this authenticity to how they react, and I think that's really special. So like like when people take selfies, that they take like 4 or 5 photos, and then they pick the best one. You don't really have that when I'm taking the first photo of them in their first door. So that's something I really like to get, and if it's possible to get those kind of pictures with you guys, like when you do find it and just like fresh on the top of your mind, that would be ideal. But I'm also a pragmatist, and any doors are good doors.
Do you have a dream door? Like I assume if you ever build a house, you would want that to be a reflection of all of what you sample, what you presented. So I mean, like I'm sure you've thought about that.
Yeah. So I really, really like this door right here. Just a really bold choice, because I think when people come to my house, I want them to feel welcome and warm, and that they can really be themselves. And to kind of shock them a little bit at the door and be like, whoa, quite a door, then they're more free to be themselves. They don't feel like for instance, I remember one time that I went to prom, and I went to pick this girl up at prom, and I was pretty nervous because I didn't know that many dance moves, and this is my first date. And I opened this gigantic door in Preston Hollow, and of course, behind the big white door is a big white man whose name is Mr. Hayes, and Mr. Hayes like throws his arm around me and says like, listen here, Chuck, the name of the game is being respectful towards my daughter. And I almost anticipate that from like the I guess I want people to know that I'm pretty open-minded. Nothing happened, don't worry.
Well, for feedback, great presentation overall, great eye contact. I like how you led us in with an activity and took us through, and I think that at the end, everybody was solid on what we were to get out of the presentation, so kudos to you.
That was very thoughtful and inspired.
You're a great storyteller, you really are. I always love listening to your stories about your experiences and your family, so kudos.
Yeah, all around phenomenal job. Was it the YouTube video? I mean, this is one of the best attended presentations ever, beyond just an intern presentation, but sort of intern presentations. Was there money involved? I say that sarcastically. What was it that was it just the YouTube video, or did you do some around the shop tours, or what?
Wait, can I jump in before you answer that? Because I've never worked with Charlie. I was literally at my desk, a week or two ago, early in the morning, and he stopped by and introduced himself and said, will you watch this video and see if it makes sense to you? So I was waiting for it, and I'm like, I don't know who you are, but please invite me to whatever it is. It's so awesome. Like, it was just that intriguing part of, I think, including the video, but then the lead of, come see why this even makes sense in the world that you live in.
Did you watch the video? I did not, no.
Yeah, you should watch the video. I don't know how you don't come to this if you've seen the video.
I just had one a few minutes ago too.
Via the video, or?
For the video, yeah.
Okay.
And when we were talking about that last week, I was talking about, I saw some program on TV, and this guy had, $100 billion house, and he spent like, probably $500,000 on doors just on the house. And they asked him why, and he says, because I want every single door in the house to be completely different, so when you walk into each room, it's like a completely different world. But I was just going, so I just thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I tied in a little bit.
I just think it's such a simple idea and thought that your mom had that you took and expanded. And so it's something I think is going to stay with me for a long time. I'm going to probably start doing this, and my family drives me crazy a little bit. Interesting and memorable. And I think, I can't help but think I'm going to walk away wanting to find a door to send to email.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, to her point, but I think what I really appreciate about this is that you gave us a tactical thing to do, which is give me a door picture. You gave us plenty of things to thoroughly think about in our own philosophies and our own lives, and then you also tied it down to what's the point I'm trying to make, and it was very clear in that. So, congratulations on that. You made me think, and I appreciate that.
And you made us laugh.
That wasn't the plan, but that was the plan.